But John, I want to shift gears here now because, Bruce Arians said another interesting thing, and you actually gave me a great segue. Speaking of Blaine Gabbert got a lot of praise from Bruce Arians recently when you guys talked about it on pewterreport.com. Bruce Arians said Blaine Gabbert is the most underrated player in the NFL. That is the exact quote there, right?
Yes. That's what he said.
Now, John, I don't know if you know the history of Blaine Gabbert here on the YouTube channel, but we have a nickname for Gabbert here, and it's called the Gift of Gabbert, because he is just a gift to this team. He is a gift to this fan base, and he's just wonderful. He's just wonderful. Everybody loves Blaine Gabbert. I know that for a fact, okay?
That's true.
And if you love Blaine Gabbert, why don't you put that down in the comments section? But, John, talking more about this, this obviously has a couple of threads there where you think about the backup quarterback, battle between Ryan Griffin and Blaine Gabbert, and we can talk about those battles in a little bit. But, was kind of, what are your thoughts on that? That's quite a statement to make.
Yeah, if it wasn't Arians, you might think a little more of it, but that's Arians. He says things off the cuff, and next week he could say it about somebody else. I don't know if I would say he's dramatic, but he just kind of that's just how he is. He makes statements like that, and it's just like, that's just that to me isn't a big deal. Oh, you blow it up and it's a story and it goes viral and everybody talks about it. I don't care. I don't pay attention to that stuff. Like, I don't care how it sounded. You know what I mean? Right. Anybody knows, people know what I meant. I think he's underrated. He might not be the most underrated guy, but so that's why he would see it. But that's what he said, most underrated player in the league. So then you're like, okay, well, this is ridiculous. But I will say this about Blaine Gabbert. I think that he's grown as a person and as a leader and in his approach to the game professionally, being in a stable environment. Not to say that he was ever immature or unprofessional at all, but just being in a stable environment where the expectations are set for you. You're coming into a couple of years of being in the same organization. Early in his career, you say what you want about the accuracy. It's never going to be great with him. He's always going to have some limitations. He was always overdrafted, but you end up looking a lot worse when you get onto the field because of the instability around you. So, could he be okay or more adequate than he was early in his career in Tampa Bay? Now at his, because quarterbacks don't tend to physically or athletically depreciate really. Like he hasn't really declined in any way, I would say, and he's probably grown in other ways. We've seen so little of him. So I don't think he would be the train wreck that we saw early in his career. But I don't think, he's not the desirable long-term starter of this franchise, nor should he be a guy you ever go into the year saying like, all right, this is going to be one of our two options, or, even at the position. He's a backup. Great to have as a backup. I think better backup situation in Tampa Bay than a lot of places around the league if you need to devise a game plan, win a game or two. But long story short, if Brady's out for any extended period of time, the Bucs are probably they're better equipped to weather that storm than other teams would be around the league. I was just looking at the NFC South before we got on. Actually, I'm like, if Atlanta lost Matt Ryan, they probably won't win a game. AJ McCarron and Felipe Franks are their backups. The Bucs would still be an okay team, obviously not a contender or a serious playoff threat or anything like that, but they would still be an okay team, I think, not like a bottom feeder in the league where a lot of teams, if they lost their starter, would be a bottom feeder, but the drop off would be significant for sure.
So what I'm hearing is that, we could have a Blaine Gabbert season in the future. I know Scott Reynolds loves Blaine Gabbert too. There was that campaign he had to bring Blaine back. On the Pewter Report podcast. That's wonderful. But, man, going deeper into it, this isn't the first, praise that Blaine Gabbert has gotten. Like Bruce Arians has said in the past, you can win games with Blaine Gabbert. Jason Light, now this could have very easily been a smokescreen, but Jason Light said after the season, he was like, hey, Blaine Gabbert can be that long-term guy. He can be the face of the team here at quarterback. So, where does all this praise come from? Because, obviously, the gift of Gabbert, we all love him over here. But, what is this infatuation? Where do you think that comes from? Because, Blaine Gabbert spent a couple of years with Bruce Arians, from time to time, right? And Brian Leftwich and whatnot. So, where does this come from?
Well, I think a lot of it is honestly his demeanor and his character, at least his football character, maybe his personal character too, I'm sure. But I think they all really like just the way he conducts himself. Like he's funny, he's fun, he's light, he comes on always confident, he knows his stuff, he relates well to the guys. He's the size they want, he's the arm strength they want. Physically, like he's their makeup. He has a little bit of athleticism, got out of a jam against Detroit, converted, I think, a 3rd and long with his legs. And so he is kind of it's not surprising to me, I guess, that they gravitate toward him. I think he's just likable dude. You know, whenever they commented, Arians and Leftwich, about how much they liked him, it wasn't said in like we can't wait to persuade you about how great this guy, you know, plays quarterback or how accurate he is, how pretty the ball he throws is. They were more like, we just like him as a person. We really like him, you know, and then both of them went on and to talk about that part of it. And I think they're intrigued by his skill set. Obviously, physically, he's got a great skill set. He's always had that. Really good arm. But I think, yeah, they definitely, no question about it, accuracy and decision-making have always been a concern. And even in that Detroit game, he missed some throws pretty ugly. So he'll never, to me, his ceiling is probably never to be what they hope it will be. But I think, yeah, his character and his personality have a lot to do with why they're big fans of having him in the room.
One thing I will say, too, and I've been talking about this in the past couple of videos, but Blaine Gabbert, you know, I think people maybe underestimate him a little bit in terms of like a mentorship type role, you know, with Kyle Trask being here, you know, in terms of him learning the offense and getting more acclimated to the NFL. Blaine Gabbert can be that guy who is going to be there with Kyle Trask and really teach him things when, you know, Tom might not be around going off doing Tom Brady things. You know, Blaine Gabbert can be there and really be a good pipeline of information to a guy like Kyle Trask coming into the NFL. Blaine Gabbert, he's a former 1st-round pick. He knows what it's like, you know, to be a high-tier draft pick at a quarterback position and, you know, deal with the, you know, the pressure that's surrounded with that. He knows Bruce Arians' offensive system. He's helped Tom Brady with Bruce Arians' offensive system before. So, I mean, like, I feel like there is a lot of benefit there to having Blaine Gabbert on the team. What do you think about him, like, in that mentorship type role and just helping out a young guy like Kyle Trask?
It's definitely possible. I mean, I don't think it's a role we've seen him in before, maybe before in his career. So hopefully we get to talk to Kyle Trask and we get some of his thoughts on that, you know, how that process has been and what he's learned from those guys. But even for Brady, I mean, Brady's mentioned he and Griffin as being very helpful for him in that process of coming to an offense that those guys knew better. You know, they still joke around. They say Gabbert knows the offense better than Brady. You know, that's probably not true, but I mean, maybe on paper, but put him in a game situation, I think I know who I'd take to know the offense better. But yeah. I think that's part of the, you know, so you've seen him do that. So, you know, there should be some recognition on his part. Hey, like, this is where my career's at right now. Like, let's make the most of it. Let's, you know, be a great team player. But so he could be helpful for Trask in that way. He also may see it as competition. You know, eventually he thinks it's going to be him and Trask for that job. And so, maybe he doesn't want to help him out as much because of that. So we'll see what ends up happening. But I do think he'll be cool about it. Like everybody says, he's a great team guy. And so I think that he'll be cool about it. Yeah, so we'll definitely have to wait and see. Blaine Gabbert, I mean, he's going to have a very interesting battle here coming up soon for that second or third quarterback job. You know, we'll have to wait and see how that shakes up. We will talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, is Blaine Gabbert the most underrated player in the NFL? I mean, you know, who knows? The gift of Gabbert, man. It's a thing. I'm just saying. You know, he looked great against Detroit. It was a wonderful thing to watch.